Hello everyone. Let me show you the newest scenario I created. So this one is S2D Bare Metal with SCVMM. In this case, what we will do, we will deploy entire 4-node S2D infrastructure from SCVMM. So there are two options. You can either deploy entire infrastructure from the DC itself, but for best practices, I will do all deployment from the management machine, which is Windows 10. You can also notice that there is WDS, and in WDS there is a full operating system. That's because WDS role requires full GUI. If you don't have any of these parent disks, you can create it. So I already have it. There's Windows 10 and there is Windows 2016 full. You can create it with a tool provided in the tools folder. This one is create parent disks.ps1. You can just right click and run with PowerShell, and there will be a guide which will guide you through providing the ISO file, ISO image, and cumulative updates. Then you will provide a name. You will also select the edition of the from the Vim file, so edition, and if you would like to have Windows 10 Enterprise or Windows 10 Professional, or if you would like to have standard or data center edition of the Windows server. So let me guide you through the environment itself. So let me log in into the management machine. So what you have to do is you have to log in for the first time, every time, and then log off, just to kick in the enhanced session mode. I don't know what is it with the Windows 10 machines, but with Windows Server you don't have to do this. I remember that this was like fixed like maybe 1 year ago, maybe a little bit more, in Windows Server, but for the Windows client it stayed the same. I already have remote server administration tools installed here. You can validate it by just running server manager. So you can see it, I have it here. So let's take a look into the scenario itself. So what I will do, I will open up the PowerShell as administrator. Keep it on left like this. What I will do, I will also open up the ISC as administrator and keep it right like this. Come on. Like this. I'll just switch to the script view, and what I will do, I will copy the script from the scenario PS1. I will go to the raw, select all text, copy it, and then just paste it into this PowerShell ISE. So in this case, with hitting Ctrl+M, I can collapse all the sections and I can read the region by region, which is exactly the same as there is a description in the lab guide. It is also region by region. So there's region variables, basic SCVMM configuration, networks, virtual switch, and so on. So let me just run it region by region. In this case, I can also go with multiple regions at once. But let me just go region by region, so it will be, I think, easier for us. So let me make this window bigger, so you can see more. So for now, what I will do, I'll just let it move it like that, so you can see a little bit more. There are some prerequisites, so this one is just checking if you have everything installed. I recommend you to go and install manually the HyperV feature. HyperV management feature, because there is one thing that cannot be done with the script, and this is just this ticking one small tick box. Because if you try to install just management tools with a PowerShell, it will fail because it will tell you that you need also this parent feature, right? But you are not able to install just parent feature without install HyperV itself, so it's a little bit bummer. So let me just install these management tools. and we can validate this by running a region prerequisite. Copy, and let me wait for it, just this to finish, so we'll be able to see that all prerequisites are met. There will be also one thing. One other prerequisite is if you have a SCVMM console installed or not. So let me just make it more like this. And as the console is not installed, you will be asked for installation media. So there's like a prompt for pre-set up exe for SCVMM setup. So I have all my SCVMM installation files in my tools disk, so I'll just point it to a exe file. If you run this script in the DC, of course in the DC is everything installed already. So you should be able to, you should be able to just, continue without SCVMM being installed. But I like these things as it should be, so that's why I'm using Windows 10 machine to manage entire infrastructure. So VMM console is being installed. Hopefully it will pop up here soon. So if you'll take a look into the code, it's just validating if the client installation is client. If the installation type is client, it will just check for the KB. If it's server, it will check for tools installed. So the script is pretty universal. It checks for all the prerequisites in both DC and in both Windows client SKU. So after the VMM console will be installed, the script will load the module. And actually, I think to apply the module, you need to restart the PowerShell. So the script will just say, I just hit enter to exit, and you will need to run another instance of the PowerShell. Therefore, just pin your PowerShell to the taskbar. So if it will close, you will still have your PowerShell on the taskbar available. This scenario is a little bit longer, so I'll be pausing recording multiple times, as it takes like 1 hour to finish. You just cannot run a script like this, for example, like selecting everything. I also prefer running everything from the PowerShell like that. I'm doing not from PowerShell ISE. So you cannot run everything because there are sections that needs to be run from the HyperV host. It means from your machine where your VMs are running, just to create empty machines that will be bare metal deployed. And also because I didn't test it, I was just running everything region by region, so there may be some timeouts. So it's strange. It's now it's installed. So please enter hit enter to exit. So I'm just exiting the PowerShell. I'll run it again as an administrator, move it left, and then just say, hey, I would like to check the prerequisites again. Now it will find the module available, so it will import it. There's one weird thingy that it will report some errors. Just skip it. It's not a problem. So let's see. SCVMM Console is installed. It's fine. So let's continue. There are some variables. You may want to modify this variable, especially if you are running this from the domain controller. So if we are running in everything from the WDS, let's continue like this. So let me just copy variables and paste it here. As you can see, we are providing very different 7 names, domain names, so you can easily modify it for the real environments. Now I'm asked for run as admin credentials. These credentials are corp /lab admin. If you type it wrong, it's validated, so you should be, come on, corp /lab admin ls1 setup exclamation mark. If you type it wrong, like this, it will ask you again, right? So so you can type it multiple times and it will still be okay. So if you mess it up, it's actually checked. So ls1 setup exclamation mark. Now it's fine. You can also notice if you go to the variables that there will be also domain join account, but it will just fill it with run as account credentials. Now you are asked for the VHD, for the parent disk, just use server core 2016. I had also references that Windows Insider Preview is working, so if you want to deploy real-world infrastructure, you can just set up this domain controller and just connect it to the same network where you have physical machines, and then provide Insider Preview here, and you can deploy it. So we have everything from the variables. So let's configure some basic SCVMM configuration. We will import, we will start services on the VMM server if it's not running. Usually SCVMM service is not running at all, so it needs to be started. We can also, what we can do, we can open up the Virtual Machine Manager console. In here you will just type DC and hit connect. So we'll be connecting to our domain controller where the Virtual Machine Manager is installed. Notice that the version is 18.01. Now the Virtual Machine Manager module is being imported, and we'll probably see some errors. I guess it's expected because there's some conflict between the same aliases. So yep, we will create host group. We will disable automatic virtual network creation, and we'll create run as accounts. What I like to do is I will just open up the jobs like this, and we can monitor how many jobs are running. So let me just do this and this with the jobs, so we can have like a nice view what's actually happening. So let's configure some networks and let the fun begin. The jobs will be jumping, hopefully. Yeah, it's jumping, it's creating a lot of stuff. You can notice that VM networks are already created now. In the fabric we can see our networks also created in here. We have like data center network and some fake VMs network, where in data center network you have multiple IP subnets like this. What also scripted, it also created a virtual switch. Oh, not yet, it will be created soon, so it will be probably next section. So 18 jobs, okay, cool. So let's create virtual switch. Oh, there's one thing I wanted to show you. If you want to get rid of the networks, there is a small commenting section, so you can just paste it and say, hey, I want to delete all this stuff. I don't want to have it anymore. So in case you are playing with logical networks and you are, for example, modifying the variables and you would like to create something different, you can run it over and over just to test if everything is fine and if everything is as you want to be. So well, we have a lot of jobs again happening. 46, pretty funny, isn't it? So let me configure virtual switch now. So in virtual switches we should see now logical switch called set switch. We should see that there is embedded team uplink mode, and we can see multiple virtual ports. Especially you can see this virtual RDMA, then just VMQ and the VMQ with VRSS. And also there is management and two SMB adapters. With the virtual ports, I created the special ones because we are not using weights. So in the settings, we should see that there is no bandwidth mode. So it's actually the same as we use absolute. So we are not using anything. You can also specify if you'd like to have SRIOV switch or not. It's just one setting in the variables. Next step will be to create physical computer profiles. So we will use VHD to copy it into the library, and this way um, will be a physical computer profile created. So this VHD we provided in the beginning will be used for the profile itself. Yeah. So let me just paste this. There are also, you can notice that there are also commented section. If you are deploying some real-world hardware, you can uncomment it and run it. So, for example, this is just how to get drivers from the library. I think, isn't it? Isn't this? Yeah, this is how to. Um, So you are basically tagging drivers that are located in the library. So if you, for example, you can copy drivers to the library and just make and create tags. In this case, just using a tag called HP ProAligned TL318G9. So now we are copying the file into the library. It will be a few minutes. We should see now the VHD in the library itself. So let's take a look. So there's our library and domain controller. There is our VHD. It's properly tagged with the proper operating system. We should be also able to see the physical computer profile. This is our HyperV host with all host configuration like domain, admin password, run as account. We don't have any product key. We have the default time zone, but you can modify it as you want. The last step before we will start hydration will be to configure WDS. So in this case, the WDS is running on the WDS server, so we will just install the feature and then we will enable WDS with some location. You will see some warnings, it's kind of expected. So let's wait a little bit. And then there should be a job running that will add the WDS server to the SCVMM, so we will be able to see it in Fabric in infrastructure. So that will be our Pixie server. So yeah, so now we are we enabled credit SSP, so we can send out the credentials to the remote server and then run WDS utilization, WS util, to initialize the server with the C remote install location for our Vim files. So now it's just setting this credit SSP. And this is why we are using separate server. This is why we are not using domain controller, because this is not possible with domain controller. And also, if we are using this Windows 10 machine, we have to do this delegation. If you would use the domain controller itself, you don't have to do any delegation because it's on the same server. But I'm just trying to lead with examples, and in this case we are doing everything as it should be. So we just enable CRUD SSP and then again disable it. So let's wait a little bit more. I guess I should pause it and oh, it's now working. So we can see this is the warning. This is kind of expected. You see warnings, but everything is working fine. WDS will be provisioned. Let's take a look in the next section. So there is a small piece of code that will create for you a VMs. So you need to make sure that this path actually exists. In my case, I have a SCVMM1. So I'll just modify it to have a SCVMM1. And this points to the VMs, the same path that you have, oh, not this one, the same path as you have in your host, where you have your VMs. So when you will run cleanup, it will actually clean up everything, including these new machines. So I will grab this script. Oh, okay, let's take a look what's there. It will be creating 12 hard drives, and it will create 4 nodes, and with this memory startup bytes, and it will enable a nested virtualization. So you can modify it as you need. So 2 gigs of memory should be enough. Should work fine. So let me just copy this region and get ready for pasting into my host. So this is my host, right? So this is different. If I move it like down, it's just, you know, not covering the window of the virtual machine connection. So it's really outside, and the host name is my laptop. Just make sure you are pasting in the right place. So we are now waiting for image to be copied to the WDS server. We should see the Pixie server set up here in the jobs. See, so we are importing UP image. So we are still waiting. So what I will do, I will just move the window here, copy it, and just wait for this to finish, and I will create new VMs. I can show you what VMs I have so far on my host. I have just 3 VMs, DC, management, and WDS server. As you can see, it consumes not much memory. It's like, I don't know, 6 gigabytes or something, 6.5. But we will create more soon. I will pause the recording so we don't have to watch the progress. So I just resumed the capture, and as you can see, Pixie server is added. So there's no more script running. So now I will paste the script in my host that will create some VMs. It will create S2D1, S2D2, S2D3. It will add there several disks. So we should see multiple disks being added. It's quite, you know, simple script. If there are automatic checkpoints, it will also disable this feature, so you don't get a checkpoint when you start a VM. So it's kind of useful. As the VM will boot, it will try to Pixie boot. So we should see here attempt for Pixie boot, but Pixie server will not give it any address, and it will actually log everything to the event log, right? So when you would open up the event log on the WDS server, you should see that there are some messages that someone tried to boot but didn't get any IP address. That someone is identified by MAC address and GUID, and we will see it soon. So let's open up this deploy host, and because it's very interesting, I will just go piece by piece and I'll just show you what's there. So if you have any real-world deployments, you can specify a host with this kind of hash table where you specify names, IP addresses, MAC addresses, BMC address, and then also GUID of the machine. If you do just a simulation, I will grab this GUID from event log. So I will just connect to my VMM server, which is now okay. So it's logged on the VMM server, not the WDS server. Sorry. So the VMM server is domain controller, and I will just get the Windows event from this log, and I will just select only the message that looks like will not deploy, and just grab the information and just grab the unique. So if someone will try to boot multiple times, I will just grab the first one. And then I will create this host table. So it's just a hash table with hosts, but I will just create it from the logs. So I have all the VMs now running, so all VMs attempted to boot. Script actually finished on the host. So now we should be able to see some messages. So let me just paste this piece of code that will just grab these messages from the remote machine. And let's take a look if we have HyperV host. So we have our host here, because the first machine, I know that the first machine that booted should be called S2D1, so I'll just create S2D1, S2D2, S2D3, S2D4 as the machine booted. So as you can see, I also added IP address into the hash table, and this MAC address and this GUID is from event log. What I will do next is I will add DHCP reservation, because I want these machines to have these IP addresses that are specified in the hash table. So I will add the RSAT if it's not present. I will add DHCP reservations. So if you would open up the server manager, and if you want to open up the DHCP management tool, you should be able to see that the reservations are in place now. So let's connect to the server. Let's connect to the DC and see the reservation in the scope ID. This one. Here are the reservations, right? Cool. You also may want to have NTP server configured. I sometimes saw on the real-world hosts that if this is not configured, especially on the Blade chassis, but this is probably not the case. And now that time zone was totally different. So you want these servers, when the service boots, you want to synchronize everything. So let's now start deployment, and let me just copy this section that will just create a deployment, and then it will just create the loop that will wait for jobs to finish. We should see the jobs now here. So the next step will be to turn off the computers like this, like turn off, because shutting down doesn't make sense. There is no agent inside, there is no operating system. What I really like to do is to hit connect like this, and then just right click and start the machines, and then just watch how it looks like. So we should see that the machines will negotiate with Pixie server, that they are booting. Now the machines will grab the Vim file that will be used for the boot, and it will try to boot. You can see the progress here. It's actually the same progress as you can see in the jobs menu. I saw sometimes that these deployments are failing, so just repeat it until it's done. It's just failing because I guess it's because the host is pretty utilized, so I mean heavily utilized. We can take a look in the task manager. It's pretty fun also watching when the VHD is being transferred. So CPU is a bit, yeah, it's like 50%. It's not a big deal now, but let's watch disks. Still not a big deal. Let me just watch the jobs. So these are the jobs that are in progress. Hopefully everything will go okay. You can expand it like this. Let me just make it bigger, it will be better. So you can expand it like this and watch each job, how it progresses. So now we are waiting for the machine to pixie boot. It should be registering into the server. Hopefully all will succeed. Hopefully. Yeah, it looks good. It's configuring all the disks, and still all the 4 VMs are running great. So just make sure that your host is doing only this bare metal deployment. So now it's transferring VHD, and this is where it starts to be funny. The write speeds and read speeds are increasing, so this is really torturing your SSD. So VHDs are now being transferred. It's really fun to watch. I really enjoy it every time I see it. See, all are transferring disks. Pretty funny. Like write speed is like 400 megabytes a second. Just make sure you have enough free space. Check it regularly. I have around, okay, now only 30 gigs of free space. Okay. For this is really useful if you have the duplication, which is a bit tricky to have it on the Windows client, but you can find some how-tos on the internet. Or you can just vote on the, we have on the, what is the page name where we provide a feedback? For the Windows server, you can provide a feedback, and there is one category where someone asked, hey, you want the duplication and the client SKU. And man, there were like 500 people voting for this, so it got the best feedback. So yeah, it's really useful thing if you can use it, especially for the VMs. It's really useful. Hopefully, I will not run out of the space. I have remaining 16 gigs, 14. Okay, it's getting down. So let's see. So disks were apparently transferred. Let's take a look what's happening in the jobs now. Enabling HyperV, enable HyperV, good. Sounds good. Let me move it like this. And after HyperV will be enabled, we will see a reboot. I think this is the most exciting part from the scenario. I was told multiple times this is not possible, and I just wanted to prove that this is really possible to deploy, to simulate the bare metal deployment in the laptop. So you can see 33%. It's basically doing the checking of the jobs. When the first job will finish, it will check for the second job, and until all jobs are either completed or failed. So let me minimize this region. And then the next steps will be to apply a switch. This static IP address doesn't work, but I cover it. So yeah, let's watch the progress. Machine is now booting. It will reboot twice. If you would just turn off the machine, mount the VHD, take a look inside, there will be inside the VHD, there will be another VHD. And inside that VHD, you would find answer file with username and password of the domain join account that we have in SCVMM. In this case, this is domain admin, so it's not the best practice to specify domain admins in here, but for example configuration, it's pretty okay. So how about these two? So we are here cleaning up, and these two are already restarting. So okay. So I guess I'll just pause the recording and get back when everything will be finished. Because now it will just reboot and install the VMM agent, and then it will just refresh the host and everything will be done. So let me just pause the recording and then I will come back after this will be finished. So I just resumed the recording. Nodes are deployed. All deployments finished. So we can continue in the script, but first I will show you how it looks like in the SCVMM. We should see in CLDC 4 nodes here. So the next step would be to apply virtual switch. So we will just refresh all the hosts and deploy virtual switch like this. So let me just copy it and paste it. What you can do, you can open up the console here, here, and in logical switches, and you can open up these host view, so you can have an overview how it looks like on the host. So what I will do now, I will pause the recording again and I will show you how it looks like when all the jobs finishes. So I'm now back. So as you can see, all the logical switch are applied now. S2D1, S2D2, S2D3, and S2D4. So the next step would be to this would be just go and apply the static IP address. So if you have management adapter like this, you may want to just say, hey, I would like to have the same IP address, the very same IP address as you already have. This doesn't work in GUI for some, I don't know, reason. This code is just a copy of what I just clicked. So I do it different way. And then you would just continue with, configure networking. Not sure. I don't think there are all the best practices. There is just networking. There is there are no recommendations for the physical host. There is no setting of the power plan or anything like that. So what I will do, I will just run these steps, and then I will show you all the results and how it looks like in the SCVMM. So what I will do now, I will run all these remaining sections and show you the results, but let me pause the recording and run it and then show it to you. So all PowerShell scripts are now finished. What we did actually, so we did configure everything with a, I call it classic approach, because we are not using SCVMM for this, because if you would use SCVMM it would probably hang. I tried multiple times, it just doesn't work in virtual environment. So Let me show you. So we have our S2D cluster, and the file share witness is configured. We have 24 roles configured, just some dummy VMs without any operating system. We have 4 nodes. We have some virtual disks, just simulation of 4 mirror disk and 4 mirror accelerated parity disks. We have pool, and we have networks, 1 for management and 1 for SMB. You can also notice here that it's not renamed to management. It's the default name that was created with SCVMM. I didn't touch it. Here we go, and we see SMB1 and SMB2 adapter for each node. So in SCVMM, you have your cluster, and you would also see all the networks and everything, but I think we covered it. In the logical networks, you can see your virtual switches, or you can see it like this. So let me scroll down here into the classification and pools. Here we have some classification for the pool. It looks like this. Then you can create classification for the VMs. Unfortunately, it looks like this. I mean, for the virtual disks, but unfortunately, it looks like this. You can use this classification for the virtual disks, as I mentioned now. You can go to the properties of each node and see here in the storage. And here in the storage for each disk, you can see the classification itself. So when you create a resource, you can use the classification where you would like to create the resource on what what speed, if it should be mirror or mirror accelerated parity, for example. So I guess this is it. So this is how you can do and try bare metal deployment. Similar tools, similar script, just with few changes you can use for the real-world deployment of the real-world servers. So even you can use this WS 2016 lamp, you can just hydrate DC and then work with the real servers and deploy real servers. So you can have lab, and you can also deploy daily builds. Daily builds, not daily builds, but you can build the insider previews. So if you are Microsoft and you have access to daily builds, you can of course grab daily build VHD and put it on some real service. But if you are not, I guess you are not, you can grab this VHD from insider preview, add it into the library, add it into your host profile, and then just rebuild your nodes. I guess this is it. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, just let me know under the video, and see you next time.